Thank you for being here. We are about to start the session now. So, first of all, let me thank you for coming here. It's nice to see that our topic has sparked so much interest and so many people have already started to talk to us about their questions, and there will probably be a little time for questions in the end of the presentation. But first of all, let me introduce my colleague Jan. He is from D1. They are consulting us. They are our data analytics partner. And he helped implementing the journey that we are about to speak now. I myself am Clemens. I am from PAX. We are a Swiss life insurance company. So let me start by giving you some context about what it means. First of all, we are a very old business. Life insurance business is very old, almost 150 years old for PAX. And we have a lot of assets under our management. And also for the context of this presentation, it's important to know that historically, PAX had many SAP developers in-house. We did many implementations. We used the ERP, and almost all our software at one point was SAP. Some things are starting to shift out, but still there's a huge SAP stack and huge SAP knowledge within the company. And to give you an idea, I assume most of you don't work in life insurance business. But just to give you an idea about the data that we're facing and the challenges, the oldest policy that is still active today dates back to January 1956. So that started on a paper, has been migrating to different papers and then to different IT systems. So as you can imagine, there is a challenging data quality within the data and very scarce contact points with the customers. So that is quite the challenge. And also we have different challenges like stringent regulations coming from FINMA. They are looking how we calculate things, and we really have to prove what we did there. So this is also quite the challenge. And yeah, this is like the situation that we started out. And then we had we had a problem seeing that the BW that we are using BW on HANA, is reaching the end of life. Yeah, there will be an extended support period up until 2030, but it's best to be out of it or to have an alternative by 2028. So this was the situation. We thought, okay, what can we do? And I mean, with the background I just gave you, it's quite obvious we have SAP knowledge, and the obvious candidate would be to just migrate to the SAP 4HANA version, giving us another 10 years of runtime. But management and some other people within the company, they asked, could there be an alternative? Like, is there anything out there in the market, maybe that's more affordable, maybe that will increase our time to market, maybe that will do something good for us. So let's not go to the logical candidate, let's evaluate if there is an alternative. But as you can imagine, having many SAP developers in our company, some working there for 20 years or more, and knowing everything about SAP and not so much about the other alternatives, this is obviously a delicate situation. Having one party going to this one direction and one party saying, well, I call them SAP natives, and they want to stay within SAP. So this was a delicate situation, and we thought, okay, we can't just decide within an instant of a second what to do. So we need to do something together. We need to have a good approach on that. And this is where I hand over to you, my colleague Jan. He will talk to you about how we approach that.
Thank you also from my side. And the mic is working, right? Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Okay, it sounds very quiet. And so to go to the approach, I mean, from the introduction you heard from Clemens, it is definitely not only a question about technology, right? You need to look at different aspects. You need to look at the organization and at the culture, how we work together. And centered there is always the business value. And that's also how we wanted to go on this journey. So we started out with the proof of value phase, where we checked for one use case, which has a benefit for business. And we checked the architecture. What do we need? Can we actually implement this using Azure and Databricks, as I will show in a second? From there, we moved on to a design phase where we addressed all these security concerns. I mean, it's a regulated environment we're working in, so the security boundaries are very important there. And now we're basically at the point where we start rolling out. We have our first business user on the platform now, and we're slowly roll out and getting into production there. But let me first focus on this first phase of our journey, so the proof of value phase. And well, we said we definitely need two things. We have this kind of delicate situation there that people needs to be convinced. It needs to be a convincing story here. Otherwise, we have no chance within the company. So on the one aspect is it even possible? And here I would like to show the architecture we proposed. This is actually the architecture after the proof of architecture phase and not the proof of value phase. But just to give you an idea, I will quickly guide you through here. So we have the system of records here. We just differentiate here between SAP and non-SAP for simplicity reasons. And then we used basically Azure Data Factory, which basically combines this blue box here and also this virtual machine where we have a self-hosted integration runtime installed on top to kind of ingest our data. The ingested data lands in our so-called landing area or staging area, and basically all transformation on the data are then done in Databricks. And you see here we have this so-called factory and lab space. Basically, they're like built up by two different workspaces, one for productive pipelines where no end users have access to the workspace, and then we have a lab environment here where we have the self-service capability. You have read-only access from factory catalogs using workspace binding. And if you have questions about that, just please come up to me after the session. As a reporting tool in the end, we use Power BI and pretty like general setup, GitHub for infrastructure as code and our pipeline code, basically. But let's take a little zoom in here on the first part because that's relatively critical. So how do we get to the data? I mentioned it's the data factory, and there's the SAP CDC connector. It's supported by Azure, and that's we're basically using to directly go on the ODP framework here, which sits on top of the ERP systems. We are using the extractors and ingest the data basically from there. Principle, one can build this up even using a very nice metadata-driven data extraction mode because the Azure Data Factory also you can query all the metadata from the ERP system and then build your pipelines basically out of this metadata. So that's a really, really nice approach there. So infrastructure-wise, we're set, but what else do we need? Well, we need a convincing use case. So from a scale of a, let's say easy report, which is easy to implement and maybe has fast business value because people can use it directly in business, to on the very other edge have something extremely complex, which might be more convincing and has a higher acceptance within the company, but also it requires a lot more effort and chances of failing are much higher. But as we were in the situation, we kind of had to go. I mean, it's kind of obvious now showing this slide. We had to go to the complex use case. And what we did was we kind of used, they called it the most complex use case we have. And our assumption was if we can solve that one, we can solve every other one, which we have implemented in the BW. So it's called the transaction statistic. Basically what it does is you have all the policies with all these retrospective mutations, but you only track kind of the status of the policy. But what you're actually interested in is all the transaction between the different states of a policy. And that leads to like 2.3 billion records. And in ABAP, it's implemented in many, many loops, as you can imagine. It's around 10,000 lines of code. So with that, I would like to hand over. The stage is set, and Clemens will guide you through the journey now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. You got the idea that it is a delicate situation. People need convincing that something out there, something out of the SAP ecosystem might be a good solution. But how can you start giving that mindset, and how can you start opening people up to the idea? And I think this is very critical. If you just go in there, if just some consultant company comes in and tells you this is how you do it like this, I don't think that it will work out because people are not convinced. So they need to feel it themselves. They need to get, they need to be part of it. This is what we understand from co-creation. From the beginning on, we decided, okay, we need a handover from day one. We don't just need any consultants coming in and telling us what to do. We need to be able to say what we want to do ourselves. And then, of course, since we don't have the knowledge out of the SAP world, we need somebody helping us in a way that we understand it. And also, like showing appreciation to the people involved. That is very, very important. Like imagine you are working on SAP, you know everything, and suddenly you use all that power, you lose it. Yeah, you can't really. You're the most senior SAP guy, and suddenly you don't even know how to use the new platform. So this is critical, and you have to show the people that you actually appreciate the knowledge, because even if it's a different platform, they still have the business knowledge. They still know about what they implemented back then. They know the business well. They have experience that new guys probably don't have, but they need time. They need to know that they have time to adapt. They need to know that there's a perspective for that, a motivation for them. And this is where you should really take your time and really onboard everybody, even those who might not be everybody who is affected, like even somebody who's not an engineer working on a platform, but a requirement engineer who will look data up on the platform. They should also be a part of that. And you really need to have everybody in the team, everybody involved by that, everybody affected by it, have some part, some say in that. And we achieved that by basically just starting to gather one day a week in the office, have a big table where we talk about the issues, where somebody says, okay, maybe I'm not that convinced that this problem will work out. And then we will take our time, say, okay, let's meet again in 2 weeks. Until then, we try to prove it. Of course, having consultants, they try to prove that it can be done, and when the senior SAP developers saw, okay, it is done and it's pretty quick, they suddenly start to see maybe there is some benefit to that new platform, but they need time, appreciation, and a good exchange in person, in an office, talking about all the pressing issues that they may have. And in the end, I promised my team that we will only recommend any decisions that, or any recommendations that we will give out if it is a uniform decision. Like if at least one of us is saying, no, I don't really believe in our plan, then we can't recommend it. And so it was all about getting everybody on board, hearing every voice, and making sure that everybody is heard. So this is on a cultural level, and of course it needs to have the backup of management, to have the trust of the C-levels. So I can only recommend you getting this if you plan to do some similar journey. And then we have the next dimension. Now we're leaving culture, we're going to technology. And in our proof of concept phase, we actually saw, okay, we need to prove that the technology itself is giving us value. Like the assumption was, maybe there is a better alternative, maybe it's less expensive, so we need to prove that it can be less expensive. And the way we did that is basically on 2 pillars. The one is the optimizing existing things, like being cheaper in the same pipelines. And the other pillar would be something like allowing for new things, like streaming data or something else that we weren't capable of before. So these are two aspects giving you value from the technology. And there's even more criteria in them. Let's hop into one. Like I said, one thing is time to market, like how long does it take to develop something? And Jan has already talked about our use case that we were starting to implement. It's 10,000 lines of ABAP, and the SAP guys, they said, well, if we can even achieve like the mapping, there's a basic step there, then we will be, that's fine, that's a good sign that we can work on that platform. But they didn't really believe that we would be able to actually do that whole thing. And in the end, we did that whole thing within time and within budget, so that was pretty convincing for the developers to see, okay, maybe there's something to it. And the best thing about it is, while we did that, we gathered great knowledge about the platform. They saw, okay, I have the time to adapt to the new platform, I can be a part of this. And so it's, of course, it's easy when you have success in the use case. And since it was the most complex one, it was very convincing for the people involved. And we also learned a lot from that about the technology. Like when we looked at the costs of the pipelines, we saw that this is just predictions that we made here, and we saw that the BW, we have a fixed machine, fixed capabilities, and it's always running. But in reality, you don't have the same hardware needs anytime. Yeah, there's some peaks, some low peaks, some high peaks, and usually you just scale in a way that you think is still okay, yeah? But you can't really have the biggest machine for that one use case. And that one complex use case we had, it was taking like 96 hours in our SAP BW. So that was a long time. And suddenly, after we implemented it on Databricks, we were able to cut that time down by 81% out of the box. Like there was no optimization in caching. We didn't even use a very big cluster. It was like a medium-sized one, and already it ran pretty fast out of the box. So this was something that we saw, okay, this is not only getting us a cost benefit because we don't have to run the hardware all the time, we just spin up some clusters when we need them, but also it gave us the benefit, or the benefit to the business, that the reports can be done in time. Yeah? They had to wait until Thursday to get their numbers from that report because it was running so long. And also sometimes, since, well, to be honest, our machine was pretty filled up with that report. Sometimes it gets stuck, we have to restart it again, and now they were able to see the numbers they need on Monday morning. Yeah? And if we want to, we can even put a bigger cluster on that. So this is giving real business value to the people. This is not just cost efficiency, but also being able to see your numbers earlier. And also there's some other side effects. Like I said, optimize the existing. With Databricks and Power BI, the integration, that's pretty seamlessly. And before that, the self-service capabilities on the BW, they were quite limited. Like onboarding on an SAP system, I tried it, and it's not that easy, to be honest. And with Databricks, we can actually bring users who know a little SQL onto the platform if they want. But also with Power BI, they can consume everything. And before on the BW, we started seeing like different solutions where the business just said, okay, we need this now. They implemented a new software, and this basically becomes a mess. So in the end, we were able to reduce the landscape of different systems by using Databricks and Power BI because it really fits the needs of many different systems. So this reduced our complexity and gives us a benefit in costs that can't be really appointed to this project, but rather having less complexity in your landscape is always good. And also there's some other hidden costs that we discovered. Like on the top, you see a process graphic for our the release process on our Business W. And of course, this could be optimized already on SAP. There's no such limitations that you can't really automate things. But since it is an established process that has been in place for many years, it's way harder to change that process that is intact and people working on it, and they always work like it. They don't see the need to change that process. But starting out greenfield, starting on a new platform, it allows you to think, okay, what would be the most perfect process that we can think of? And then we don't go for any compromises. We want that perfect process. And since Databricks has an API-first approach, it's always possible to automate in a fairly easy way, I must say. So on the release process, we can see that we will decrease our hidden costs. Like this is people in the process on top actually moving things, doing things manually, and they don't have to do that anymore in the future, or at least right now already. So this is like hidden costs aspect that you should also consider, although they don't give you a number. Like this is, you can't really put a value tag to it, but it's obvious that there is some value in there. So overall, we were able to prove that the technology brings value on many different dimensions. And later on, we will see that it also allows us to start something new, which is the second pillar of value creation here. And yeah, right now, Jan will tell us about how the organizational aspects in this journey were handled. So Jan, the stage is yours.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you, Clemens. So as you heard already, like from a technology perspective, there are no reasons why not to move to Databricks. We have a use case, we could implement the use case, and also we were quite fast, but what we actually needed was, well, what does the organization want? So how do they want to become a more data-driven company than they're at the moment? And basically, I always try to keep in mind, IT must obviously serve business, so let's just ask them what they want. So we went out to business and did 25 interviews and basically evaluated 45 criteria which a new data platform should have for business. And to sum them up, basically we could condense them to these 4. It's mostly time to market, that there can be improvements done in that area. On the other hand, they want to do more themselves. It should be less complex. There shouldn't be files like downloaded, sent via email and things. It should be in one uniform platform where they can help themselves and are not relying on IT to help them. And another thing is there needs to be a common understanding of the data, because like different, I think for policy there are 8 different definitions. I think the policy, what was it again? The policy revenue or something. Depending on which department you ask, they have completely different definitions, and you somehow have to streamline that. And for that, also the central data hub would be an ideal candidate. So we have these 4 criteria, and we then looked again at our, I think it was the 3rd slide. So we have the status quo, we have the 4HANA, and we have Databricks, and how do they match the criteria. So this is definitely a PAX context. This is not, I wouldn't say that this will exactly look the same for every other company, but in our context, with the tools available, it looked a lot like the Databricks will be the ideal solution, but on the other hand, there are a lot of criteria which are completely independent of the platform. For example, regarding anything like data modeling, having a common understanding of the data. So Databricks is for sure not a proof success by definition, but it needs a lot of work, and there needs to be a lot of thought taken into the whole thing. And that brings me to the next point. I already addressed it a little bit, data. So how can we have like a common place for all data? We want to have a single source of truth in our company, and it should not look something like this, right? You have exactly the same data on the left and right here. It's just slightly different ordered. So how can we achieve that? And we did this by having the typical medallion approach. So we have a landing stage here, and well, we named them slightly different. It's unified would be bronze, silver, gold. And we used Data Vault for modeling. The bronze layer basically is a fully historized version of our data, but all data sources are completely separated and treated individually. And from curated, the business logic is implemented with, of course, the very important help from our SAP developers, because they know the business knowledge and I personally don't. So there's a lot of interaction in especially that part. And then serving the data is then kind of served mostly in star schemas for applications like Power BI. And that's also something we did in the POA, is building a report on top of this transaction statistics. So this is mock data. You can't really see it. It's in the bottom right. So you will not find out anything about PAX business here. But it really showed, like previously there were Excel sheets giving the numbers. It worked out very fine, but it really was an improvement for them to see that you can implement Power BI directly with Databricks. It's very seamless, and that you can build these fairly fast on top of our existing data models there. So with that, basically, we went through our entire journey. We looked at all the different pillars of our framework. And I hope I could convince you that it was more than just a technology decision. It was driven by business and their business needs. And yes, basically, with that, we went to the executive board, presented our case, and they decided that they will follow our guidance or our recommendation, and that we will decommission the BW until 2028 and move to Databricks, and as we call it, a so-called brick-by-brick approach, especially meaning that we do not want to do lift and shift and migrating everything as it was, but we want to take our time doing the data modeling and unifying the perspective on the data on Databricks. And just a few points, summarizing from before, like on an organizational level, well, the self-service was a very big factor there, and technology-wise, reduction, of course, and simplify the architectural landscape, And then on the data, it's definitely the opportunity, having a green field that one can invest heavily into data modeling there and data catalog. And with that, I'd like to hand back over to Clemens.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, so the decision has been made. It was a uniform recommendation, and our top C-levels followed that recommendation. And they were very happy that it was uniform because, as I said, the situation was delicate. People could be offended if it's not the decision that they wanted or something like that. But in the end, we managed to get everybody on board, which is, at least from my perspective, quite an achievement that we had there. And so management said, okay, we trust you. You will do this up until 2028. And now it's the question, what has happened since then? Like, of course, we were happy that we got the trust. And so we started implementing the platform. We had some learnings from the POC phase that we changed a little bit. But in the end, it was pretty similar what we did then. And we immediately, like even a week after the decision has been made, we saw that some stakeholders that have been in the interviews before, the interviews Jan was mentioning, they said, okay, is my pain point finally solved? When do I get this? When can this problem be tackled? And of course, not every pain point can be immediately addressed, but some of them we were able to address quite fast. Like, let me give you an example. I also worked on that project. We had a migration from an old claims system. It has been out of place long time, but since we have stringent regulations and we need to be able to still see the data for what it was, we had to migrate the data in order to be able in the future to still get some insights on these data. And it is an old system and nobody back from back then was still in the company. It was kind of lost knowledge. The documentations weren't that perfect, to put it slightly, and it was very complex and confusing data model, having all the technical names in the columns. And also, since the data was quite big and it wouldn't be enough to just take a small sample size, you actually had to make the transformations on the whole data in order to see if the result in the end is the same, if your assumptions that you were making are checking out. So they started it years ago and tried it with different approaches. And when you start something on your computer in the evening, you have an idea, you want to test, does this join work? Will it give me the correct results? And then you come back in the morning and you see, no, I missed something there. This is frustrating because you have to rethink about what you just made. And finally, with Databricks, we onboarded the business engineers and they know a little SQL. They immediately felt happy on that platform. The Databricks assistant helped them a lot if they didn't know the documentation. Yeah, and I can say I'm not a developer myself, but I like to develop, and using Databricks with the assistant, that was quite nice in that context. And also, the lineage was a key feature, like seeing where your data comes from. The business says, okay, this number isn't working out. And then you can track back, where does my data actually come from? And okay, it's very small here, but you can see the names of the columns. They are very confusing. And so it was a very big challenge that we were just now with Databricks finally able to solve together. Having cluster times, having big clusters and getting the result in 5 minutes, it's way better than waiting a whole night for your results. And so all in all, that was already a great success. This is just one success story that followed after our decision. And also other departments like our product and pricing division, they were using pandas already. Like, they know Python, they have their scripts, they're running their calculations, but they didn't have a single platform that they could run it on, like working collaboratively, you know what I mean, working together on the platform. And now they were able, we migrated that to Databricks, and there was just some minor tweaks that we had to do, and suddenly everything ran. They were happy. Yeah? And this is like getting real value to the business already without even transforming or migrating anything. This is just by having a new platform up and running. And also we did some smaller POCs with other divisions showing the capabilities that the platform can now give SQL endpoints in a very fast manner, that they can develop on it. And also, and I think this is, today it's more important than ever, AI. Everybody in business is asking for AI. And even though they may not have the real use case, they still want it. And now they can try on the platform. The integration is pretty seamlessly. And since we started, I think DBRX has come out, and many more different things are starting on that platform. And for us, in the beginning, the decision was, made on a data side. AI wasn't the main aspect of it, but we feel very confident and happy that we have the platform that is AI ready now. And if somebody wants to try something with AI, they can do that self-service on our platform and see if their use case is actually, if it survives, if it can hold up the expectations. So all in all, this is quite a success already. And the thing that we are moving now towards is becoming a data-driven company. Yeah, we are not quite there yet, but we have a target, we have a goal, and it will take a few years, of course, to really get that mindset into the people, to migrate, to gather new data sources. But if you take anything away from this presentation, it is that this transformation to a data-driven company, it's not a technological thing. Of course, technological aspects, they are a part of it, and maybe they are what sparks the interest in the beginning. But in the end, business and IT really need to work together so that you know about your business needs, that you can fulfill the business needs, and also have the team on board, like make it a bottom-up approach. The initiative can come out of the C-levels. They, like with us, they said, evaluate if there is something new. But in the end, the recommendation, the work, the proof of concept, it has to be done by the people working on the platform, and they need to be convinced, and that takes time. It's a luxury to take time, but it's worth it in the end, because right now, if you could hear our most senior SAP developer, he would tell you basically the same. He is convinced now, and he wouldn't be if it was a top-down decision. Yeah, and in the end, co-creation is always, this is basically what I was just telling you, or we were telling you about the last few minutes. So these are the key takeaways. Thank you so much for your attention.